oh my god, we're actually here, we're actually seeing this movie, or at least I am, because I got into a press screening for it ahead of time. Yeah, guys, this is the movie I was wondering for years, could it be good? Was it going to get shut down during production because of either a fan riot or going over budget or something? Well, the answer to both of those questions is yes, and I'm glad it didn't, because this movie is really good. So, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, in case you haven't heard, pits the Dark Knight versus the Man of Steel, a vigilante versus an alien, and it's ultimately about the world deciding what kind of hero does it really want to see. And I think that makes a lot of sense because over the past decade now, you've seen movies talk about what is a hero, what is a hero, what is a symbol, what is a heroic symbol, what is a symbolic hero, and it's ultimately just to talk about what is a hero going on and on and on throughout multiple franchises, multiple movies, multiple comic book lore legends, and now that we have multiple heroes in multiple movies, it's good that you're exploring the question of what kind of hero do we really want to see, because there's different kinds of heroes as established by previous movies. So this movie is ultimately the world deciding, does it want to see Batman as its hero, or does it want to see Superman as its hero? And it goes deeper than that. It's ultimately more of a Batman story and a Superman story that kind of weave together in their conflict, and how it's ultimately those two movies tying together. Now, I will say right off the bat, I really like Superman in this movie. I like that Superman was established more from Man of Steel in this movie, because Man of Steel set him up, but this movie really established him. But for me personally, Ben Affleck stole the show because his character was set up and established all in this one movie. He came in and he came into play because Ben Affleck absolutely killed it as Batman in this movie. Batman and Bruce Wayne were like fueled by anger in this movie, not justice. In most movies, it's like Batman, he's the knight, he's the justice, but in this movie, he is straight up anger. It's the line in the trailer where you see, it's like, how many good guys are left, how many stayed that way, and you feel like Batman's been corrupted by Gotham City over the past 20 years he's been working in it. And I thought that Batman was just such a cool character to follow because of that reason. So Ben Affleck was kind of the movie stealer for me, but I will say there were other parts of this movie that I really enjoyed, such as Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I never thought Wonder Woman should be in this movie. I thought that it was a Batman and a Superman movie, but without spoiling anything, I was very happy with how she was handled in this movie. I might do a spoiler-filled review, and I will talk more about that in my spoiler-filled review. Something I wasn't exactly that happy about was Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor in this movie, and if you guys have been following my blog for a while, you know that I was never really a fan of Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor in this movie. I always thought he would just kind of be like whiny and doing exactly what Jesse Eisenberg always does in every movie, and I will say, I really like the character they were going for in this movie, but it wasn't Lex Luthor. By that I mean, if you're going in with like a huge comic book standpoint, then you are going to be disappointed by this movie. I liked Jesse Eisenberg in this movie as the character he was going for, but he was not Lex Luthor. He was not the comic book iteration of Lex Luthor. So he worked for me as just like an eccentric scientist, but not as Lex Luthor. So just keep that in mind if you're going, and don't expect to see the methodical evil genius that Lex Luthor is known to be by all you diehard comic book fans. Other than that, I have very few other complaints with the movie. I mean, the movie moves really, really fast. It's a 2.5-hour movie, and it feels like a 2.5-hour movie, friends. It goes from A to B to C to D to E to F to G to H, and like, it's moving so fast you never really get a chance to breathe, which could be a bit of an issue, but then you hear there's like a 3-hour, 10-minute version of the movie that's going to come out on Blu-ray, and you imagine that there's going to be like moments for you to breathe when the Blu-ray comes out, and you see that 3-hour version, like a couple moments to reflect. But as far as the theatrical cut, I really didn't feel like there was much time for you to like think about what was going on. It was just moving from plot, just so it can tell all of its story, all the story that it wanted to tell in 2.5 hours and get you out of the theater and back home before Jeopardy's on. And in that, there are a couple transitions in the movie, such as like, let's say step U to V, or let's say like step X to Y or something, that aren't quite as workable as the other steps in the movie. So first half of this movie, I love steps A through M. I loved all of them. But then steps like N through Z, there were probably 2 or 3 in there I wish they had approached differently. They just made a couple creative decisions without any spoilers. Like a couple creative decisions I just thought could have been worked better, or could have been executed differently and seemed more effective. Just some implications of certain things were a little bit different. I will say I like the ending, though. The ending is one of these cliffhangers that people could be like, what's happening? And I personally really like what they did with it. It was just like kind of a beginning of the second half type thing that I wasn't a huge fan of. Again, it's really hard to talk about this without spoiling it. But guys, this movie also had a ton of action, and the tone was really good because the tone was dark and depressing, but it had so much humor in it. If you guys are like me, you hear all this movie news, and you might have heard about a year ago, this DC executive said, we are having no jokes in any DC Universe movies ever. and that isn't true because this movie has a lot of great humor in it. Alfred was really funny in the movie, played by Jeremy Irons, and Perry White was really funny in the movie, played by Lawrence Fishburne. I thought those two brought a ton to the roles. I thought they would just be throwaways because, I mean, it's Batman and Superman show, but Perry White and Alfred really had the awesome lines in this movie. They were super funny, and I'm glad they were in the movie. To counteract them, though, Lois Lane had this kind of side plot that I wasn't a huge fan of. I mean, it was important to the story, don't get me wrong, but it just didn't feel as important as the other things going on. So I will say that, like, detracted a little bit. Not too much, but just a little bit. And of course, you know, with Zack Snyder directing this movie, you're gonna get some really sweet visuals, and the entire, like, last half hour of this movie is just a visual feast for all of you action fans out there. I think that all comic book fans are really gonna enjoy this movie. I think that a lot of casual movie fans will have a ton of fun with this movie. I think that the story in this movie is really well balanced. I love both of the characters in the center of it. I really like that you can come in it from either side. You can be either Team Batman or Team Superman, and neither one would be wrong because you understand the sides that they're both coming from. I was Team Batman going in. I'm glad that I was because Batman was just my favorite character leaving it. Even if you come in on Team Superman, you might end up liking Batman a lot because Ben Affleck really steals the show in this thing. Wonder Woman was also awesome. Jesse Eisenberg, a little bit faltery, a little bit, but like I said, his character worked for me, just not as Lex Luthor. I thought that the action was really sweet throughout the movie. There were a couple transitions I thought that could have been executed a bit better, but ultimately, by the end of this movie, I was super amped up for Justice League. The cameos in this movie were really cool too. That is all I will say. I do have a favorite. It might not be the one you're thinking of. And at the end of the day, I'm going to give Batman v Superman a B+. I thought that this was an awesome setup for the Justice League. I'm very happy that this was set up for the Justice League. It blew away all expectations I had for it. I was expecting this to be like, you know, B-, C+ material at best. I thought that it would just be all kind of thrown together, but I thought it ended up working really well for what it was going for. But guys, those are just my thoughts on Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. You guys can go over to mymoviethoughts.com to see more posts from me. You can also follow me on Twitter. I am at John M. Hayeck. Links to both of those in the description down below. Be sure to subscribe to this channel if you like what you've seen here. Be sure to like this video, share it with some friends, and as always, thank you guys so much for watching.